You wake up before the sun. Your back aches from sleeping on stone. The fire from last night has burned down to embers, and the cold has already found its way into your fingers. There is no blanket thick enough for this kind of cold. You have exactly one job today, and it is not a metaphor. Don't die. For a Neanderthal, this wasn't a dramatic opening line. This was Tuesday. For roughly 300,000 years, mornings like this repeated, with small variations, across an entire human species that walked, hunted, and raised children not so differently from how you do today. Now picture your actual Tuesday. You complain when the office air conditioning runs a little too cold. You order food delivered because cooking felt like too much effort. Your biggest physical risk today is probably a sore wrist from typing too long. So here's the real question. If you were dropped into a Neanderthal's body, in a Neanderthal's world, with nothing but what they had, would you make it through a single day? The honest answer is almost certainly no. And the reasons why reveal something about the past and something about you that most people get exactly backwards. Let's start with what a Neanderthal's body was actually asked to do every single day, just to stay alive. In 1995, researchers Thomas Berger and paleoanthropologist Eric Trinkhaus examined hundreds of Neanderthal skeletons and noticed something strange. The pattern of fractures looked less like the wear and tear of normal life and more like the injury profile of professional rodeo riders. Broken ribs, skull fractures, crushed limbs that healed crooked because there was no time to rest them properly. Why would hunting leave injuries that match getting thrown by a bull over and over for an entire lifetime? Because Neanderthals didn't hunt from a safe distance. They lacked the lightweight, balanced throwing spears that later modern humans developed. Their spears were heavy and front-loaded, built for thrusting, not throwing. To bring down a bison, a wild horse, or a woolly rhinoceros, a Neanderthal often had to get close enough to stab it by hand while it fought to kill them first. Imagine doing that for dinner. Now imagine doing it again next week, with whatever injuries didn't finish you off the first time, because there was no other reliable way to eat. That alone is reason enough. The sheer physical violence required just to get a meal would be unsurvivable to nearly anyone alive today, no matter how many years you've spent at the gym. But injury was only half the threat. The other half was the climate itself. Much of Neanderthal life unfolded during genuinely brutal glacial periods, in landscapes that sat below freezing for months at a time. There is little evidence Neanderthals sewed fitted, layered clothing, the way later humans eventually did. What insulation they had came mostly from animal hides draped and wrapped around the body, not tailored or stitched into shape. So picture trying to survive a European winter, wrapped in a single loose hide, with no boots, no down jacket, and a fire that has to be fed constantly, hour after hour, or it goes out. And so, eventually, do you. Here's where the story gets more interesting, though. Because surviving all of this wasn't purely a matter of toughness, it also depended on something far less expected. Care. In northern Iraq, inside a site called Shanidar Cave, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a Neanderthal, now known as Shanidar I. This individual had a withered, nearly useless arm, partial blindness, and significant hearing loss, injuries that should have made him a liability, unable to hunt and dangerously exposed. Yet his bones show clear signs of healing, meaning he lived for years after these injuries occurred. He could not have survived alone. Someone fed him. Someone protected him. Someone covered his share of the work. For years, expecting nothing equivalent back. That single skeleton helped rewrite how scientists think about Neanderthals. Not mindless brutes driven purely by instinct. A social species capable of sustained, costly compassion towards someone who could offer very little in return. Compare that to your own life for a second. You can get sick, lose your job, or isolate for months, and still have groceries delivered to your door through an app on your phone. Your survival doesn't hinge on whether the people around you personally choose to keep you alive, by hand, for years on end. Theirs did. There's more evidence that complicates the brutish caveman image even further. Archaeologist Karen Hardy and her team examined fossilized dental plaque, the hardened buildup on ancient teeth, taken from Neanderthal remains at the El Sidrón cave site in Spain. Trapped inside that plaque, they found traces of cooked starchy plants, along with chemical compounds matching bitter medicinal herbs like yarrow and chamomile. Plants with essentially no food value, but well known for easing pain and inflammation. A species supposedly too primitive for complex thought was apparently choosing to chew bitter, foul-tasting plants for relief, not nutrition. That isn't blind instinct. That's a working, transmitted understanding of cause and effect. So let's actually reconstruct a single day, using everything the evidence tells us. You wake stiff and cold on a stone shelf, surrounded by the same 15 or 20 people you've known your entire life. There is no stranger here, no commute, no crowd. Just the same faces, day after day, year after year, for better and for worse. You eat whatever is left from yesterday, probably meat, maybe some roasted roots, no plates, no utensils, just hands and teeth. Then the real work begins. If a herd is nearby, a small group of you sets out, carrying heavy, stone-tipped thrusting spears, hoping to get close enough to kill something many times your size and strength. You personally know people who have died doing exactly this. Today, you might be one of the unlucky ones. If there's no herd in range, you spend the day processing hides, knapping new stone tools by striking precise flakes off a stone core, or searching for plants your grandmother once showed you. Which ones feed you, and which ones will kill you if you get it wrong. By afternoon, your hands are likely cut, your shoulder aches from yesterday's hunt, and the only relief available is whatever bitter plant someone in your group already knows how to use. At night, you huddle close to the fire, because without it, you freeze. You sleep lightly, because a hyena or a cave lion nearby is a real, immediate possibility, not a distant statistic. And tomorrow, you do all of it again. For the rest of your life, which statistically ends somewhere in your 30s or 40s, assuming nothing ends it sooner. Here's the counterintuitive twist most people get wrong. We tend to assume Neanderthals went extinct because they were simply less capable than us. The evidence increasingly says otherwise. Their brains were, on average, slightly larger than modern human brains. They controlled fire, made sophisticated tools, cared for their severely disabled, and clearly understood enough basic medicine to use it deliberately. In 2010, geneticist Svante Pääbo and his team sequenced the Neanderthal genome, the complete genetic blueprint stored in their DNA, and confirmed something even more direct. Neanderthals didn't simply vanish. They interbred with the modern humans who eventually moved into their territory. Most people alive today carry small fragments of Neanderthal DNA, quietly inherited across more than 1,000 generations. So in a strange way, you wouldn't survive a single day as a Neanderthal. But a small piece of one has already survived inside you for roughly 40,000 years. What actually separated their fate from ours likely wasn't intelligence or even strength. It was almost certainly numbers, combined with how rapidly the climate shifted at the end of the last ice age. Smaller, more scattered populations meant Neanderthal groups were especially vulnerable to disease, bad seasons, and sudden disruption in a way that larger, more interconnected modern human populations simply weren't. Which brings us back to you, sitting in your version of comfort, roughly 300,000 years removed from a Neanderthal's first cold morning. You will likely never need a bitter herb to manage genuine physical pain. You will likely never face an animal that could kill you for your next meal. You will likely never depend on exactly 15 people, and only 15 people, to keep you alive through an entire winter. But it's worth sitting with what that comfort actually cost you. Your grip strength, on average, is a fraction of theirs. Your tolerance for cold, pain, and physical risk has been quietly engineered out of you by a few thousand years of convenience. You inherited their genes. You inherited very little of their resilience. So no, you would not survive a single day as a Neanderthal. But maybe that isn't really the question worth asking. The better question is whether you'd recognize, in their cold mornings, their healed broken bones, and their bitter medicine passed hand to hand from someone who had nothing to gain. The same stubborn instinct to keep another person alive that still quietly runs through everyone you've ever loved. You wake up before the sun is even necessary, because an alarm told you to. And somewhere in your blood, a Neanderthal is still waking up too.